Talk about a crusher. Yes! Oh!
Are you kidding me?
And gone!
Welcome back to the Schoolyard Sports Podcast. On the host of this podcast, Lane Frank, we're now in episode 203. So 203 episodes through. I got action-packed episode planned for you. College basketball is ramping up. We just finished up NBA All-Star Weekend, spring training coming up. I gave you that video on Empower Field at Mile High Stadium, Denver Broncos Stadium, saying we got big things coming up this week in this episode. So stay tuned. Let's hop into it. Let's start off episode number 203, how we always do, with our headlines in the NBA. Well, first things first in the NBA, let's talk about All-Star Weekend. Atrocity, in my eyes. Rising Stars game, nothing too appealing. It was okay. I liked it when it used to be freshmen versus rookies versus sophomores, when you had USA versus World. I hate the new format of it. I don't like how it's like a tournament-style thing. Not my type of thing. Okay, that was Friday night. All right, Saturday night, you get your skills challenge. Interesting skills challenge. Wemby trying to do his thing with Chris Paul. Draymond Green was on a team. All right. 3-point contest, Tyler Hero. None of them really did too great. Tyler Hero ends up winning it. All right, dunk contest. Stephon Castle had some great dunks. Mac McClung won it. That was the best part of the weekend. Still wasn't incredible, though, in my eyes. I think Stephon Castle probably should have gone to a playoff with Mac McClung even further than what they did. So it was a good dunk contest. I'll give them that right there. Stephon Castle, rookie, did a great job. Mac McClung, of course, three-time in a row, dunk contest champion. But the game was awful. The All-Star game was awful. Tournament, whatever you want to call it. Only about 40 minutes of game time. About 30-minute stoppage in between the games. It was horrible, in my opinion. The All-Star game put on for like 10 minutes. I mean, it wasn't too appealing to me. If you actually watched the full All-Star game, I mean, I give you credit. I could never do that. That was a horrible All-Star game in my eyes. And sad to see, because I love All-Star weekend. And to see that was tough. So maybe at this point, it's something I've posed in the past. Maybe we do go to that World versus America type of game where we have the stars like Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander go up against the Anthony Edwards, LeBron James, Stephen Curry's of the world in a World versus America type of style for the All-Star game. Something I used to be opposed to, now I might have to be in favor of. It's bad for the NBA for All-Star Weekend. Last thing in the NBA, the superstar Victor Wembanyama unfortunately will be out for the rest of the year with a deep vein thrombosis in his shoulder. It's dangerous. It's a blood clot. Has to be taken seriously. He'll be shut down for the rest of the year. Key thing right here. A guy like Chris Bosh, who was at the top of his game, who had been All-Star that same year, he got the deep vein thrombosis, never played again. Hopefully we don't see that for Victor Wembanyama. It can happen, where a guy's career can change like that. Brandon Ingram, he also had an earlier issue like this in his career. Clearly he's been fine, had a productive career out of it. But Victor Wembanyama, something that needs to be taken seriously. He'll sit down for the rest of the year. Maybe the Spurs, maybe they'll finish horribly. Maybe they'll get a top 5 pick again. Maybe they can get a trio of Cooper Flagg, Victor Wembanyama, and Stephon Castle for the next 15 years. Or, something good happens and, you get into the playoffs. De'Aaron Fox shows out a little bit. You see how that goes. But something that needs to be taken seriously. Wemby, injured with that deep vein thrombosis. A very serious, not just NBA injury issue, but a health issue in my eyes. Let's switch things over to the NFL. Not too much to the NFL. The Matthew Stafford storyline is kind of just circling right now. What's happened to Stafford? What's happened to Cooper Kupp? We're going to talk about later in their episode. That's about for news in the NFL. In MLB, not too much news either. Alex Bregman head over to the Boston Red Sox. We'll talk about that next and take of the week. And Vladimir Guerrero Jr., everybody, declines his contract extension, or he was never given one, and will enter free agency next year. Whether he's traded or not, Vlad is going to be a free agent next year. Interesting stuff right there. That's about for the headlines this week. Now, take of the week. This week's take of the week is, and I previewed it in the headlines, talking about the Boston Red Sox. Now, Boston Red Sox went out. They signed Alex Bregman last week to a pretty big deal. I mean, 3 years, $150 million, whatever it was. It's a good deal for Alex Bregman, and he'll be at third base for them. So we think. Because the best player in this Red Sox team, and the best young player they've had since Ted Williams, yes, I said it, the best young star they've had since Ted Williams, Rafael Devers, and he's been that guy for them for the past 5 years, plays the same position as Alex Bregman. He went out and he said, I'm not switching positions. I'm not doing DH. I'm not going to first base. I'm here to play third base. And Rafael Devers has every right to say that because this is a guy who has won a World Series with this team, stuck it out with his team, been there with Alex Cora, been there when they didn't have Alex Cora, when they had to fire their manager because of what happened. After, obviously, sign stealing scandal, Alex Cora wasn't there for a year. It was a tough time for him, but he stuck it out there. He's been great for them. But this franchise, they don't know what they're doing. They couldn't get any big free agents, so they panicked. They took the one free agent who plays the one position that they need. Now, maybe you put him at shortstop, but then what happens to Marcelo Meyer, one of the best prospects in the country, coming up at shortstop? Or if you put him at second base, you got some good prospects at second base. This team has been in a dark hole ever since they traded away Mookie Betts, because they got nothing in that Mookie Betts trade. Jeter Downs, horrible. Brewster Gratterall, his physical got failed, so he ended up going to the Dodgers instead. David Price, they gave him up. Okay, maybe they got rid of a little bit of money. Maybe they got a top 5 pick. They got Marcelo Meyer in the 2021 MLB draft, who I've still yet to see play in MLB. I just hyped him up earlier. Maybe he can be good, but we still haven't seen him. This team is in the world trouble because they don't have the pitching to compete. They lost Chris Sale, who they thought would be nothing more than, a mid-level starter for the rest of his career. Well, I think he just won the Cy Young. He just won the Cy Young with the Atlanta Braves. He just had a great year. Catching isn't there. The position play isn't there. The Red Sox are in world trouble. And this Rafael Devers, Alex Bregman situation is just the cherry on top of it all. I can't wait for a promising season from the Red Sox or a disaster season from the Red Sox. And I'm leaning towards disaster, everybody. That's Power for Take of the Week this week. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, top 5. This week's top 5 is the top 5 storylines to watch in the NFL this offseason. Let's hop into it. Number 5. How do the Texans build up their receiver room without Stephon Diggs, without Tank Dell for next season? Because it's a very real possibility that Stephon Diggs doesn't come back and you're not going to have Tank Dell. CJ Stroud obviously had a great rookie season. But how do you build off of that? And they tried to build off it this year, but didn't really work because Stephon Diggs was banged up, and when he was playing for them, he was great, but now he's banged up. And you really want to give whatever it is, $100 million over 4 years to a receiver who you know isn't going to stay healthy, who's towards the end of his career, maybe already out of his prime. I don't know if you're going to do that. Nico Collins is a great wide receiver 1. He can't always stay healthy. Tank Dell could be a great wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 one day. He also can't stay healthy. So how are they going to build up this receiver room, build around CJ Stroud for the future? They fired their offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. They got some good pieces around CJ Stroud still, but it'll be interesting to see. That's number 5. How do the Texans rebuild their receiver room, build off of the past 2 seasons to get better? 4. What happens with Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter? Are they going to be the first draft pick since Eli Manning to say no to a team? Because that's happened. Eli Manning got drafted by the Chargers, told them no, he wanted to go to New York or anywhere else but San Diego. Could Shedeur Sanders do that to, let's say, the Tennessee Titans, the Cleveland Browns? Could Travis Hunter do that to somebody else? We're going to have to wait and see. That's number 4. How does this Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter draft storyline play out? 3. What happens to Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp of the Los Angeles Rams? It'll be interesting to see because Kupp is obviously a receiver and a great receiver who's been the NFL's leading receiver, in the past, had a great season, beat Calvin Johnson's record. Where does he end up and what's the price for him? Same with Matthew Stafford. I mean, what's his price going to be? Could it be a first-round pick? I know they want the Giants' first-round pick. Could be a second-round pick. Could be a third-round pick. Could be for just a straight-up player. We're going to have to wait and see. That's number 3. What happens to Matthew Stafford this offseason? Number 2, what happens with Sam Darnold? Does he get that massive extension, $30 million, to go to a new team? Does he stay in Minnesota, or does he end up getting nothing? Maybe a low-level, $10 million deal, compete for a starting job somewhere, no guarantees. I'm interested to see that. That's number 2. And number 1, the biggest storyline I'm interested in, what happens to the NFL's biggest diva of all time, Aaron Rodgers? Does he make his way out to LA? Does he make his way to the other side of New York? Does he go to Minnesota, fill out Brett Favre's legacy? Where does Aaron Rodgers end up this offseason? That's the number 1 storyline I'm looking for. Yes, Aaron Rodgers, you want the attention? I'm giving it to you. You're number 1 on my list. That's about top 5 this week. Now, did you know? This week's Did You Know is, did you know in 1990, a game between the Boston Celtics and the Portland Trail Blazers, both teams made all of their free throws, combining for a perfect 32 for 32 from the free throw line. The only time and the first time it's happened in NBA history. Did you know that? Leave down in the comments. That's about for Did You Know this week. Now, I want to do my spotlight this week on something that I follow very closely, and that's world number 1 in tennis, 3-time Grand Slam winner, Jannik Sinner, at the very young age that he is, testing positive for steroids and being out 3 months. 3 months! The funny thing is, the women's number 1, Iga Swiatek, also tested positive for doping. Her case is still up in the air. That's besides the point. Tennis is a doping problem. It's always had a doping problem. I didn't expect the world number 1, in the very prime of his career, to test positive for doping and to be suspended 3 months I mean, if it works out for him, at least gets a little break, misses Indian Wells, misses Miami Open, comes back the day before the Rome Open. That's a little tune-up for him before the French Open, and he'll be ready to go. Now, someone like Nick Kyrgios says it's a disgrace to the sport. He should easily be suspended 3 years, 4 years, for life, whatever it might be, because that's usually what the case is, but he's the world number one. He tests positive for 1% of steroids. It's still 1%, though. It's still steroids. It's still the world number one, though. Tennis doesn't want to lose their star. It was a tough situation. In my opinion, I think the suspension is perfect. Maybe he should have lost the French Open. Probably shouldn't be allowed to play in that. Let's say Jannik Sinner, sit out until the U.S. Open. You miss Wimbledon, you miss the French Open, you'll never have to deal with this again as long as you don't put anything else that you don't want in your body. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe it was on purpose. But to say you'd be suspended 5 years, to say you shouldn't be suspended at all, are both outlandish claims. I think right now, they've got it just about right. I would have put a little bit longer, like I said. But Jannik Sinner, world number one, to have a positive doping case is a disgrace to the sport, but not enough to be suspended for 4 years or more. That's about my spotlight this week. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, my GM hat. This week's on my GM hat reflects in the new little Schoolyard Sports. You got the light blue with the black hat, a little new one in there. If you want me to sell these, comment that in the comments. But I'm going to use my GM hat this week. And we don't usually use it for college, but there's GMs in college sports now. You got to know how to construct your roster. You got to know how to manage the things right for the players in the team. Clearly, Kansas basketball out in Lawrenceville, Texas, does not know how to do that because Hunter Dickinson's on this team, and they pay him a lot of money to go there. There were schools like Maryland. There were schools like Georgetown. There was even Michigan trying to get him back. But Kansas paid him the big bag in the early days of NIL to go over there. He went over there. They were the preseason number one last year. Boom! Started out pretty well. Then things fall off. They end up being like a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. They lose round 32 to Gonzaga. Okay, they come back this year. They get a few good pieces. AJ Storr. Hunter Dickinson actually comes back because his draft stock is terrible. This may seem like a little bit biased for me. Yes, Hunter Dickinson was out in Michigan. Yes, I used to like Hunter Dickinson. Now I think that Hunter Dickinson is one of the dirtiest and one of the most overrated players we've had in college basketball in the past 10 years. Topic for another time. They come back this year as the number one team with AJ Storr, a transfer from Wisconsin, a few other guys, KJ Adams, and they think it's going to be Happy Trails. And it was for a while. They beat Duke. They beat a few other teams. They were ready to go. They even beat Michigan State. Then they go into Creighton. They lose that one. Then they go down to Missouri. They lose that one. Okay. Go into Big 12 play. Choke against Houston. If you would lose a few other games. You go over to Utah, which you think is going to be a great trip. You get demolished by Utah. You get demolished by BYU by 34 points. I look at the score. They weren't down 78-52. They weren't down 78-62. They weren't down 78-72. They were down 78-52 at one point in that game. And the funny thing is to me, Igor Dorman, the star of BYU, he only had like 9 points. Bill Self knows there's an issue with this team. He knows there's an issue with Kansas basketball. Because Kansas basketball, in my opinion, would have been a much better team this year without Hunter Dickinson. If they got somebody else in the transfer portal outside Dickinson. If they didn't have Dickinson to run this team through, they'd be a much better team, in my opinion. But the fact of the matter is, Kansas basketball is overrated. I look at the days of David McCormick, Ochai Agbaji, Marcus Garrett, the days they won the championship, when I picked them to win the championship. I just don't see that in this team. I don't see that at Bill Self. I was so happy when Kansas won the 2022 NCAA championship. I don't see that same fight at this team. I don't see that same coaching out of Bill Self. Now, Bill Self is a guy who's always been heavily rumored to go over to the San Antonio Spurs to be Greg Popovich's successor. Now, this might be Popovich's last season in the NBA. Of course, he's dealing with his health issue. He's not on the court right now. If he doesn't come back to the Spurs, Bill Self might say, to heck with it with college basketball. To heck with it with the Jayhawks. Let me go over there. Let me go to the NBA. Let me play with Victor Wembanyama. Coach him for a few years. Stephen Castle, De'Aaron Fox. Maybe even a little Cooper Flagg if they get lucky this offseason. Let's see how that goes. Kansas basketball, it's a dominant brand. It's a great brand. Allen Fieldhouse, one of the best sites in college basketball. I'll say this right here and right now. I've been to Cameron Indoor. I've seen Allen Fieldhouse on TV. They don't seem that different. I'll even say Allen Fieldhouse might be better. The home court advantage was that elite. They used to never lose games at Allen Fieldhouse. Now it seems like on the regular against good teams. Hate to see it out of Kansas basketball, but that's about for my GM hat this week on what needs to happen with Kansas basketball. You don't bring Hunter Dickinson back for a 6th year, even if it was possible. Bill Self, might be time for him to go, and some other things to be figured out in Kansas. That's about for my GM hat this week. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, I want to give you my scorching hot NBA hot takes at this point in February. Let's hop into it. First one, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the number one team in the NBA with the best record in the NBA, don't make the conference finals. Sorry, Darius Garland. Sorry, Donovan Mitchell. Sorry, anybody else on that team. You're not making the conference finals. Next one. The Lakers don't win a playoff series. I watch this Lakers team. I watch Luka Doncic. I watch LeBron James. Luka Doncic gets the ball in the clutch 0 times the other night against the Charlotte Hornets. LeBron gets it twice, misses both of them. Funny stat, LeBron is 1 of 25 in go-ahead or tying situations with the Los Angeles Lakers since joining them in 2018. 1 for 25. Now, I'm not saying LeBron's not a clutch player. He's obviously been a very clutch player in his career. But for Luka Doncic, a guy who was very clutch in his time at Dallas, a young star, maybe it's time for him to get some of these clutch shots. Say, hey, LeBron, it's my time. How are they going to, score on this team? Who's going to score? Because it's going to be LeBron most of the game or is it going to be Luka most of the game? Both these guys are elite passers and elite scorers. But how are you going to balance that out? Because it's going to be interesting to see without a center, because obviously the Mark Williams trade got rescinded. You're going to have Jackson Hayes out there going up against big guys like Nikola Jokic, like Chet Holmgren. You're not going to get a top 5 seed. I can assure you that. You might get stuck in the play-in. So Lakers don't win a playoff series, in my opinion. Next one. The Bucks either blow it up this offseason, get rid of Giannis, or they trade Damian Lillard and pair Giannis up with Kevin Durant. That'd be an awesome sight to see. Giannis with Kevin Durant, or this whole team getting blown up. Let's have to see how it goes this offseason. But one of those two is happening this offseason because I don't see any success with this team in the playoffs this year. Next one. John Morant and the Grizzlies make the finals. John Morant and the Grizzlies are in a great position right now. I think they match up best with anybody in the West. I think they match up well with Denver. John Morant versus Jamal Murray. I'll take John Morant there. Jaren Jackson versus Michael Porter, or even Jaren Jackson and Zach Edey double teaming Nikola Jokic. I like those odds, even going up against Oklahoma City. Grizzlies make it to the finals this year. They'll go up against the Boston Celtics, but I don't want to give my finals prediction too yet. Next one. The Warriors miss the playoffs. The Warriors can get into the play-in, and I don't think they get into the playoffs. I don't see enough star power on this team. Yes, we have Jimmy Butler. Yes, we have Draymond Green. Yes, we have Steph Curry. It's not all going to work out this season. So we're going to have to regroup this offseason, see how things work, maybe get rid of Bram Podziemski. Obviously, didn't work out with getting Kevin Durant, but I don't think the Warriors make the playoffs this year. That's a big hot take I got for you right there. And the last hot take I got for you. The Celtics go back-to-back, everybody, over the Memphis Grizzlies. That's about for my NBA hot takes this week. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Now, at the buzzer. This week's At the Buzzer, it's about the Yankees star, or should I say future star, the Martian, as he's always been called, Jason Dominguez. Because all I've ever heard about this guy from the age he was 16 years old is to buy his card right now, to buy stock in Jason Dominguez, the outfielder right now. Now, what I've seen from him was a home run in his MLB debut, and then Tommy John surgery that held him out in most of last year, most of that season. But now is the time for Jason Dominguez, the Martian. You want to be the Martian, you want to be that elite player, the time is now to step up. We're a month away from opening day. Hopefully he can make that opening day roster. Because if he doesn't, Jason Dominguez might just be one of the biggest prospect busts we've ever seen in MLB. But he can also be the Juan Soto of this next generation, the Aaron Judge of this next generation, the Mike Trout even of this next generation. That's about for At the Buzzer this week. Now, question of the day. This week's question of the day is, what is the hardest position to play in sports? Is it pitcher? Well, you get 5 days off. Is it quarterback? Well, you're only playing a few months of the year. Is it an NBA player? You're running up the court the whole entire time. What is the hardest position to play in sports? That's about for question of the day. That's about for Schoolyard Sports Delay. Frank, episode 203. Thank you for tuning in. Follow Schoolyard Sports on Instagram at Schoolyard Sports. Follow Schoolyard Sports at X at Schoolyard Sport. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review for the best sports content in the world. Be back next week. Episode 204. Stay tuned.